Hey, hey, hey.
Hello, and we are live. What day is it? It's Wednesday, March the 12th, 2025. Wow. I remember back in the 90s, we used to say, how would the world be in the year 2000? And here we are, quarter of a century after that, and I'm still alive and young and beautiful and hanging out with some of the smartest people on the planet, which switch the screens around so it looks like we're looking at each other. rather than I don't want to talk to you, Rodolfo, today. So, how is everyone? Welcome to Create with Maxon on another beautiful spring. Well, it's rather cold. It's minus 12 Celsius, but it's beautiful outside. I have to tell you,
Kind of
it's
gray
really,
in Germany anyway.
yeah.
So,
Okay. So, hello. Let's see who's in the chats. We are streaming on 3 channels today: the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel, the Maxon YouTube channel, and the Maxon ZBrush YouTube channel. And as far as the replays, they will be hosted with timestamps and comments provided by a very good friend and mentor, Dr. Sassy, on the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. That's where you find these recorded, although live on all 3. And today is the second installment of gaming workflows, and Rodolfo is going to show us some magic using ZBrush and a bit of Substance Painter. Is that accurate?
that is correct. Yes. We're going to do, I'm going to talk a little bit about basically what I do, my workflow, which has been like that even before I joined Maxon. It was the same workflow. And it involves mostly ZBrush and Substance. Like that's
No. It involves mostly being awesome. And then
I was like, wait a minute.
wait a minute. Yeah, awesome stuff. Anyone that didn't see the first episode, that was last week, go catch up on the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. And yeah, we're going to proceed immediately, and we're going to do the housekeeping towards the end of the show so you can get directly into the essence of things. So, boom.
Right. There we go. All righty. Okay, so what I have here is the ZPR that we've showed last week as well, right? We have a bunch of different tools, a little bit of a tease there for next week's stream. And what I'm showing here is a trim sheet for anyone who's familiar with game art and any sort of like environment art workflows. You guys know what this is. This is basically something that's tiling from one direction to the other. And we also have actual tileable textures that are tileable up and down and, left and right. So those two things for games are probably one of the most important assets that you can generate for whatever reason. And you're going to say, okay, but I don't want my game to be like all about tileable textures. But the idea is to strike a balance between that, right? Like as we talked about last week, we are the way to kill the illusion of this being a modular sort of environment is to have a balance between tileable textures, trim sheets, modular, uniquely modeled pieces, and eventually just tileable assets, right? So as I've shown you before, for example, last week we talked about the rocks, right? A little bit of like how to model the rocks and bake it. And I'm going to show a little bit of that just in case, because this is related to tileable textures. But I wanted to start with the most basic, the most commonly known. I don't know how commonly known, actually. To be fair, I don't know how commonly that is known. That's how you say it. Because you'd be surprised the amount of times I get this question, or sometimes I'm just showing it, assuming that most people know this. And then sometimes even industry professionals come to me and go like, oh, I didn't know you could do that, right? So that's why I'm going to start with the most, at least the oldest way, or one of the oldest ways that you can generate tileable textures. So I'm going to start with just, again, good old plain 3D over here. And again, as you know, plain 3D, if you start with a primitive here from the tool palette, a lot of options just disappear because this is still not a sculptable mesh. So what you need to do is go over here to initialize. You can change your divides if you want. In this case, I like to keep everything square just because I'm going to sculpt on this. And the more square the polygons are, the better they are for sculpting and for subdividing, obviously. So in this case, I'm just going to go with this default one. Just going to go up into on our tool palette, click Make PolyMesh 3D. And what I'm going to show you is just the basic sculpting, tileable sculpting, right? So you have a little feature in ZBrush, and let me just divide this. I don't want to divide by rounding these corners. I don't want to smooth that. So I'm going to go to geometry, and on my divide button, there's next to it, there's a smooth button. So if you turn this off and you divide it, it's not going to smooth those edges. So let me do this again with the smooth button. And you can see it's rounding out those edges because that's the nature of subdivisions, right? And if I go like this without the smooth button and click divide a bunch of times, then we get like sharp edges. And we want this plane to match our grid because then again, when we're tiling and we're sculpting, basically we're sculpting in a tileable manner. ZBrush is going to look at a specific ratio, which is usually our plane 3D ratio. It's set to 1 in terms of ZBrush units, right? 1 height and 1 width. So what we need to do is any brush that you have picked, let's go with this DEM standard because that's a little bit more obvious, like when you're sculpting. So the Damien standard brush is basically doing this, right? So the problem when you're doing this is that if you start to go overboard, it's not going to tile properly, and you might want to, maybe you're tempted to just duplicate this model. I've seen a lot of people do this, and then just move it and turn off solo mode and just move it and try to match perfectly. Maybe you could even move it perfectly by holding shift and then just move it by 2 units precisely, and you can see it matches perfectly. It matches perfectly because that plane, in essence, has a 1 unit scale. That's the default for this plane 3D. So what you need to do in order to make this tileable is go to your brush, any brush that you have selected, any sculpting brush. You can go over here under curve, and you can turn on wrap mode. Now, this wrap mode, what it does, and this is also another, I'm going to shout this out again because most people don't know this. If you hold control and hover over anything on the ZBrush UI, any button, it's going to pop up an explanation of what it's doing. So if you're anytime you're in doubt of what this thing does, or if it does what you want it to do, just hold control, and now you know what this is going to do and what every wrap mode will be doing. Like if you're turning it to 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, sometimes these are just modes. In case of the wrap mode, it's just how many times is it tiling. So if I turn wrap mode on this brush and now I start sculpting, you can see, oh, well, it's not turning on. Let me go back. Yeah. So yeah, I was holding control. So if you hold control, you're actually turning wrap mode for the mask button. Be careful with that because you might want tiling mode for mask. So if I'm doing a mask, you can see like it's tiling, right? It's sculpting on both sides. So I don't want that for the masking brush. I want this for the Damien standard. So I'm going to go wrap mode on the Damien standard. And now if I do this, this is what's going to start to happen. So now I'm making sure that this is tileable. Now, a problem that sometimes people face with this, and that's why a lot of people go, oh, but if you use wrap mode, you have to change your document and all of that to make it a square document so then you can grab. Well, yes, but also no. I've seen a lot of people also duplicating objects and just having a duplicate plane so they can frame that document onto that plane so it doesn't like distort. You can see there's a little bit of distortion if I turn on and off perspective. This perspective is off. You can see there's a little bit of distortion if I sculpt near the edge. And if I start sculpting really hard, you can see like the actual edge is going to go a little crazy. Now, it's not going to match perfectly to that because this is just the brush affecting the actual mesh, right? So what you need to do is actually make sure that there's another surface next to it that holds your brush, because again, the brush is a 3D brush. If you go to the side, it's gonna tilt a little bit to the side, right? The brush is going around the surface, so it's actually gonna look at that border. You see, like brush tilting slightly over there. Let me see if I can zoom it in. You see that, like the radius of that circle is tilting ever so slightly. That's why it's distorting, right? So if you want to avoid this, I use something that is called ArrayMesh to do that. To maybe what we need to do is actually, if you guys have used any texturing software like Substance Designer, like Mixer, anything, you know there's always a way to preview the tiling. So you have like your tileable texture that you're making, then you click a button, and there's like basically it starts repeating, right, that texture. So in ZBrush, what we need to do is create that using ArrayMesh. So if I'm going to array this, and maybe I want this to offset by 2, like we did with the duplication that we did before, right? So I'm just moving this an amount of 2 to the X, and then I'm going to append a new one, and I'm going to go.
Sorry, Rodolfo.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting. So we're getting some comments that it's laggy. And before we move, just hold on to that thought to talk about the tiling. I'd like to, because we have 3 channels here, can everyone confirm, just to make sure, from every channel, Sharon or Dances for Peas or someone from the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel, we're getting complaints from the Maxon YouTube channel, and let's see. All right, so Silver Bagel says there are no lag issues. That means that it's not from our end.
Yeah,
I would assume.
Okay.
Because even if one person doesn't have lag, that means it cannot be from us. Just to make sure, what's no issues from second source. So Jay and Rifan and AEY07, sorry, but there's absolutely nothing we can do if it's not from our end. Otherwise, we would have fixed the internet
Okay.
a long time ago.
So it could be also like the screen could be lagging, maybe the video, maybe our faces could be lagging. Is that it? Or
no, our faces are good. Our
Okay.
faces are good. At least
my face is lag. My face lags sometimes when I'm like,
it could be the
in the morning.
It could be the screen. Can you do a brush stroke?
Yeah,
let's
sure.
see.
So let me do like this.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
It's the screen.
It's the screen. So it's not the stream, it's the screen.
Right. And I wonder why that is. Okay. It like I can guarantee you guys not lagging on my screen. It's definitely on the stream side. So
there's nothing really we can do about that currently. I'm seeing it on not through the internet, but through StreamYard, and it's it's very slow, like 5 FPS or something, or even lower. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we have to continue in this way because we cannot control StreamYard.
Yeah.
Okay. So keep going. Sorry for the interruption, everyone.
Okay.
Rodolfo is going to move on with knowledge.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sorry, guys. Actually, there's nothing that I could do. But let me see if I actually if it actually persists. Yeah, it's a bit laggy. That's weird. Okay. I don't think it was like this on the last stream. Not sure, but it didn't look like it was. It might be something on their end. But okay. So if I press the ArrayMesh button, basically what I'm doing on the second transform stage, I need to duplicate this. I'm duplicating this and making like this maybe -2. So then it matches that plane. So now we have repeating planes on both sides, right? And basically what we want to do again is going over and do the same thing for the bottom. So I'm going to put 2 over there. If I turn off this floor, you can see like it actually, you can't notice like that there are 2 separate planes. And let's do this another one and then just go up. So in this case, -2. Oh, Jesus. I switched my keyboard and it opened up my XMD toolbox. Whoops. That's the problem having like 3 keyboard layouts, a German, an American, and a Portuguese one. So, yeah. So -2. And I think that is working. Yes. Okay. So now that we have all of these assets, so basically we have like instances of that plane, what we can do is we can test this wrap mode just by going over like this, right? Now, the problem with this, as you can see, it's still going to stretch and it's going to offset those planes based on the stretch, because when it's stretching, when you're stretching this, it's actually changing the bounding box of this model. So that means you need, on your array mesh, you need to lock the size, and you can lock the position as well. So it's going to be locked to that specific size and ratio. So now if I start sculpting, it's not going to change that. So I can sculpt on a tiled plane or just on that single plane. Doesn't really matter. Usually I just have ArrayMesh opened just for the sake of, you know, like having a preview of what it's going to look like. Especially, well, obviously, the more geometry you have, because this instancing system is still like rendering this at the same time that you're doing your strokes. So yeah, so every time you do like a stroke on the array mesh, it's going to be a little more laggy than if you're doing a stroke over here, obviously, right? But at least you can preview the tiling, and you can use this just to sculpt on the edges, like over there. When you're sculpting near the edges, that's it. That's fine. So yeah, again, oh wow, there's still people complaining about the stream being laggy, the screen being laggy. I mean,
Yeah,
there's really nothing.
You're not running anything in the background, are you?
No, it's just Substance. It's ZBrush and Substance. There's nothing.
Right. Would it be too much to ask you to turn off Substance?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's that. Let me see. Because on my screen, it's not laggy. You know what I mean? It's just on the stream. Like
yeah, but
on mine, it's
because they communicate through the internet. As so, you got
they
rid.
Do?
You
turned. Yeah, I turned off. I turned off Substance. It's still laggy from what I see. Yeah, I think it's a StreamYard. It's a StreamYard issue.
It's very possible, and I don't think I have any access to any settings here or something like that. So this is interesting. Isn't it? What is the FPS you're getting? So if you do it, I'm asking now the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel user Saikal, my fellow Greek. If you draw Rodolfo, do a small stroke, and tell me, everyone, do you actually see the stroke? Because I'm seeing the lag in the StreamYard feedback. I'm seeing the lag. There is lag, after all. So if you see the brush going, because I'm seeing it happening in discrete steps.
Yeah. I'm seeing that too on the StreamYard feedback, but not on my screen. Like on my screen, it's fluid. It's super fluid, actually. So now that I turned off Substance Painter and Unreal and all of that, then it's just ZBrush that's open. So there should be no. If does anyone? Yeah, but that bit rate is set the same way as it's set before. So it's a stream. It's a StreamYard issue. The cursor is skipping. Yeah, everyone is saying the same thing. I mean, there's nothing really we can do. It's
we can't do anything right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can carry on, and let's at least cover all the topics. You guys can ask any questions, and I can show you. I can do it in slow motion, so then we can go like maybe do a little stepping like a robot or whatever, and then maybe just maybe you put it at 2x, and you can see it, right? Yeah, turning it off and on again, right? Exactly. That's the proper IT response, right?
All right, let's quickly do it. I'm just I'm removing your screen, and
let me
remove it.
Close ZBrush. Okay, let me just close ZBrush. This is I mean, guys, we can go a little further than 1 hour and a half. It's fine by me. It's just if this is delaying the whole thing. So let me go over and open ZBrush again. Okay.
Oh, did you remove it? You didn't remove your screen from StreamYard. That was
okay.
Point. So it doesn't. Yeah, there you go, and just add it again. I'm gonna put it up. If it doesn't work, it's very unfortunate, but we can turn this into a troubleshooting session. Maybe I'm going to look in the background.
An IT stream. Let's do an IT stream.
when Rodolfo is showing his nice stuff, I'm going to look around and see if there's anything we could do. But for now,
yeah, it's still choppy on the feedback, right? Yeah, but it's on mine. It's like super fluid. I don't know what's going on. So let me just open it up again.
Okay.
And let's see. I mean, you can check it on the background while I'm explaining it. Like if there's a way to change the bit rate, but it might be that. But I think the bit rate is just set to, to the account. So yeah. Well, yeah, it's loading. Playing with the second polygroup in a square center with wrap to can also work. Yeah, exactly.
So let me post this.
Yeah, so playing with the second polygroup in a square center with wrap 2 can also work and simple select to show in high polygroups. I use this one, but the array. Yeah, it's the same idea, right? As long as you have something that is next to your actual plane that you're sculpting on, then it works. You can also just duplicate the plane. Yeah, I used to do that, but then I was like, okay, sometimes I don't want to have that much geometry. I just want to preview it, right? And so for that, I would use ArrayMesh because I can turn it on and off, right? Like an IT technician or something. So if I go, let me just do this again real quick. So I'm gonna go to geometry, turn this off, go to up to like 1,000,000, and then if I go to ArrayMesh, again, ArrayMesh, lock position, lock size, and now I'm gonna set this to 2, append new. I set this to -2. No, actually not -2 because I locked position, so it's going to be -8. There we go. And now add append a new, and this is going to be 2. No, actually, it's going to be 4 again because I locked position. And then append a new one, and it's going to be -8. There we go. Right. So in this case, we have the same thing over here, and we have that is a rendering artifact. But okay, so now if I have any brush, again, it could be the standard, it could be the clay buildup brush. So if you're sculpting, let's say, rocks or like a rocky wall pattern or something, like I have right here, this would be something that you would use, right? So you'd be doing something like using the clay buildup brush, so BCB for clay buildup, and then going to brush and turning on your WrapMode. So what I usually do is I put that button when I customize my UI, I put that button over there or next to my brushes. So I have the ability to switch it on and off depending on what I'm doing. If I'm doing tileable textures, if I'm doing a prop, whatever, that's just my idea as an environment artist. That would be what I would do all the time. So with a clay buildup brush, we could go and start doing stuff like this and then starting to sculpt. And I'm like, okay, maybe on the center, I don't need to have the ArrayMesh turned on. I set a hotkey for ArrayMesh. So I could be like doing this, and then I'm going to turn it on again and do that.
Okay,
those edges.
Yeah. Sorry for interruption. I'm trying to follow through, and I can't even see where the mouse is, unfortunately, with this lag, because it jumps from place to place. I can't see the trajectory of the mouse.
Okay.
So what I would like to suggest is I do the housekeeping where sort of not past the middle yet. I'm going to do the housekeeping. If you may, can you restart your computer?
Okay.
That's the last thing to do. Which browser are you using?
I'm using Chrome.
Okay, that's the one that's suggested. So let's just make sure that nothing else is running in Chrome. And if you can restart.
No, it's only this tab. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All
so
right. I'm going to save this, though, because I don't want to do that again.
Okay.
Stream. I just save that. And I'm sorry, everyone. So that is going to be what's going to happen. I'll be right back then.
Okay. Let's do some housekeeping. See you in a bit. So, hello, everyone. So let me go let me copy a link over here. Maybe even restart your computer, Rodolfo. That wouldn't be a bad idea. So I'm pasting a link for you that will take you to this page over here that has all the useful links. You can go to the events page where you can see what's coming up with videos and events and so forth, including NAB, which I'm attending this year. So if you come to Las Vegas in April, please come and say hello at the Maxon booth, and follow me on Twitter, or what else is it called? X, Twixer. This is my handle. And I posted a link where you can get a Maxon code for attending the show. Okay, you can go to Cineversity, which is, for anyone that doesn't know, our repository of tutorials. And I always make sure that mine are the ones that you can see first here. Who's this guy? Oh, Blake Rizzo. So go and check out the tutorials if you're interested in nodes and stuff like that for Cinema 4D. You will find a plethora. I think we're up to 21 tutorials right now. Always go to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel to check out content and quick tips and shows, live shows, creating Maxon, and all sorts of other fun stuff. The Maxon YouTube channel that has even more content with presentations and whatnot. Maxon ZBrush YouTube channel, which has all the people I envy because they're great artists and artisans at the same time, and they make all these amazing things. Of course, University, and do not forget to go to the calendar to see what shows are running for ZBrush exclusively. So let me quickly copy and paste this in the comments. Let me quickly. And of course, as my very good friend Sharon says, Maxon trainers are the heroes. And some of them wear capes. And just go to ZBrush Central. If, I do it when I'm too happy, just to get some perspective on how bad I am at art. I'm not an artist. And I look at these things and I say, I'm missing only one thing, and that is patience, besides talent and knowledge of ZBrush and knowledge of human anatomy and many other things. In any case, just go to the link I posted up there and you get access to all these, plus a little dedicated page where a forum where you can ask your questions for the Ask the Trainer session every first and third Thursday of the month. Excellent. We still don't have Rodolfo, so I'm just going to show my face here. I would love to show you something in ZBrush, but I'm not there yet. Let's see if there are any questions I can... Sure, that's exactly. We're going to have a chat in Vegas about this. Yeah, I think that Hashi and Seth, you need to catch anyone that didn't. I think it was VFX and Chill, where Hashi and Seth were trying to do something with ZBrush, and it was it was funny. It was really funny. Okay, let's see if we have any other comments here. Is this Paul? No? Yes? Let's see. I'm going to see in the comments. Anything else? I need to show this. We are the heroes. Uh-oh. We've totally lost. All right. Maybe I should bring up some Cinema 4D. Oh, not Paul. One second. Maybe I can bring up Cinema 4D and show something. Do you have any questions about Cinema 4D? Any questions on Cinema 4D? Let's see. Yeah, it's a bit of a... Oh. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. We got Rodolfo. It's coming in.
Right. Oh.
We all know that Rodolfo has a Canon camera now. Yeah, that's public.
Right, which is also not working properly. So let me do that and this instead, so we can fix this for now. This is like the interim solution. So I basically turned it off and on again. That was it. That was the IT response.
The IT response.
Okay.
Thank you, Demisart, for that. That was very good advice, and Rodolfo followed it. We not only we train people, but we learn as well.
Yeah.
Let's see if this is going to work. Now share your screen whenever you're ready.
Yeah, let me see. So
what is Cinema 4D and what does it do? I'm responding to questions since we're here. What is Cinema 4D? What does it do? So Cinema 4D is the overall best 3D content creation application. And what does it do? It makes dreams come true, I would say, creative dreams come true. And anyone that uses it to solidify their ideas can attest to that. Excellent. So I'm going to switch to Rodolfo's screen. Rodolfo now, his camera fell. Are you decent, Rodolfo? Are you wearing?
Yeah, I am.
Are you wearing clothes? Your camera.
Yeah, my camera fell. I'm decent. Don't worry. Not gonna show anything improper here. Well, unless you're not into ZBrush, then you're gonna see some stuff that's improper. It's improper because you'll be shocked out of your socks. So okay, let me see is the cursor better right now? Does that work? Oh, it's better. Oh, it's way better. Look at that.
Oh yeah, we don't have lag anymore.
Oh my god, it's great.
Okay,
there you go.
I'm gonna shush now. Enjoy the show.
All right, everyone. Sorry for that. That was a technical, the definition of a technical issue midstream being fixed on the fly. And okay, there we go. Everyone set. Are you guys ready? Do you have your seatbelts on? Okay, let me see. It's loading. It's loading the project. Oh yeah, the cursor is way better. We can see it now. There we go. There we go. Okay, so we're half an hour in, but we can go, a little bit. We can go a little bit overboard, so it doesn't matter to me. I'm fine. I'm just having fun.
For anyone that's new, overrunning is one of our traditions. If we don't do it, sort of an OCD, something is going to go wrong. So because we fixed the problem now, we have to overrun to appease the spirits.
Yeah. Okay, so we have this. So can you see the cursor? Oh yeah, that's way better. Look at that. Much better. There we go. So what I was saying is that you can use the clay buildup brush. Okay, recapping. ArrayMesh to duplicate instances of the plane. Smooth it with smooth modifier off, right? So the smooth button needs to be turned off. And then going into ArrayMesh, you need to lock your size. Otherwise, when you're starting to sculpt on that edge, obviously I need to turn on my WrapMode. So you need to save out this brush. If you want a particular brush to always have WrapMode, you have to overwrite the brush. So save out the brush. Maybe have a copy of that brush. So you have a clay buildup and a clay buildup tiling, for example. And then you load it up as ZBrush starts, like Z startup, and you have both versions. So WrapMode on, and now you can see your sculpting, and it's influencing every instance out there, right? So you can do this with my favorite one, which is the mallet brush, together with a clay buildup. They make a perfect couple. Look at that. And then they go and live ever after. Look at that. So I can just maybe go like a little bigger and then just start, chiseling away, making those rocky wall facets or something. And this is sort of like the standard. I know that took a while because of our little technical issues, but it is sort of like the standard way of creating any sort of tileable sculpt on a plane. This would be it, right? Now, another thing that you can do, and this is something that we're going to go a little crazy with ArrayMesh. Since we're talking about ArrayMesh, we can start, if we're doing, for example, a rock, like a wall that's sort of like a rocky wall, then you want to start with something. You don't want to sculpt everything from scratch. We got your back as well. So you can go, let's say I'm going to go and duplicate this plane just for the sake of the explanation. So I'm going to duplicate that, and I don't need all of those subdivisions, so I can go like that. Actually, I could retain this one and then have the other one just go like that. And now, okay, I can actually just keep that array, but I'm not going to use the array, actually. I'm just going to use the plane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use ArrayMesh and potentially NanoMesh to just create a base where I can sculpt on, right? So if I go down, like I don't want this to be like a crazy high polyplane. I don't need to do that. So what I can do is I can use some of the IMM brushes that we have here on our LightBox. So we have an IMM, an insert brush, that is the IMM bricks over here, or the clod, right? So we can use one of those for rocks, I mean, particularly for rocks. Obviously, if you're doing hard surface, that could also work. You have a bunch of different IMM hard surface brushes that are by default already loaded in your brush palette. But we're going to use this as an example. So IMM bricks has 40 bricks that you can pick from. And obviously, since this is an IMM, that means you can go here. Let me just dock this brush palette, which is already there, but you can just dock it by pressing and holding this little white icon over there and just dragging it wherever you want on one of these side planes. And then you just go down, and under modifiers, you have a little bit of an option here to create some randomness to that. So the idea is that you have this multi-selector, which it tells ZBrush, and you can see, to cycle through the meshes whenever a specific mesh is selected. So I have this brick over here. Let's say I've selected this brick. So if I drag it out on the surface, I'm dragging this out, right? And it's always dragging the same brick, right, around the mesh. Also, another thing that I can do, if I want this brick to clip through the plane, because maybe I'll use the plane as sort of like maybe plaster or concrete or something on the back, I could actually go over here on our brush palette. Again, the brush palette is where you control everything related to the brush, right? And we can change this depth. Now, this depth is particular to each mesh in the IMM. So if I change to another brick, you can see it's changing the depth. And this is basically, you have to think of this as sort of like a cross section of the surface where you're sculpting. So that little black line is the surface of the mesh where you're tapping. So now it's sitting more like in the middle, and you can see it's clipping through. It's where that mesh will spawn. So I see a question already, like, because I'm looking over there, so just to check if the stream is actually lagging or not now.
No,
and I see
I've got everything under control.
Yeah.
If you want to stop for a question,
yeah, that is an important one, because if someone doesn't really understand what an IMM is, that is sort of like the prerequisite in a sense to understand this. So an IMM is an insert multi-mesh brush, so an insert mesh brush. And you can create IMMs. We can go through that as well. An IMM is basically a mesh, a brush that has a collection of meshes, and then you can just drag them onto the surface. You can change your stroke type now. I think this was added in 2024, if I'm not mistaken, 2023 point something. So you can have now color spray, which means you can start spraying meshes like that, and obviously your poly count is going to go crazy high depending on how much polygons each one of these meshes has. Now, you can also do, let's say, like, for example, the drag stamp, which means it's going to look at your brush size. So the bigger your draw size, the bigger that brush, and then you're dragging the intensity, basically. So if you drag then your tablet without letting go, you're just telling it how thick you want that mesh to be, right? So this could be useful for something, I don't know, like maybe like bolts or anything that you want, maybe like a thinner bolt, a thicker bolt, whatever it is, right? So this is what an IMM is in simple terms, right? What gets crazy is when you start customizing that IMM, right? So when you start messing with the depth, messing with this, which was what I was going to go into, and messing with this stroke curve mode. If you want a curved IMM, so for example, we have this IMM Zipper, for example, and this is a curve, right? So if I go over here to stroke, under our stroke palette, it's on curve mode, which means that if I start drawing this, it's going to create a zipper, right? And then I can manipulate this. I can move it around, going, I don't know, just dancing around that plane like that. And then I can also just obviously just go over here and just start drawing it to extend that curve, right? And this is super powerful particularly if you're a hard surface geek like me. I don't know, I haven't shown a lot of hard surface lately, but people who know me personally know that I'm a big Gundam fan, and like Armored Core, that kind of stuff. So this, having curved brushes that can do all of your panel lines, for example, if you're doing a hard surface tileable texture, this is super useful for non-destructive workflow, together with LiveBooleans, but we'll get to that in a bit. I'm doing a little bit of a tangent here, a little bit. I mean, this has been like my 10th tangent today, but whatever. So this is what an IMM brush is, and I have this IMM bricks, which is on our LightBox, not loaded by default. You have to go under your LightBox, under brush, and select that from our insert IMM folder, right? You have a dragon here, you have some other like primitive shapes, you have the ear IMM, you have a whole train that's like this brush, for example. If I load it, it has the entire train separated by its pieces, so you can start kit bashing your own version of that train, for example, or add models to that. So I don't know why I would do this, but I could have like just a train there for some reason, like a carriage, right? So this is pretty cool, especially if you do modify this to make it like a curve, so you can just draw out the entire train like a curve, and then just have a scene and play around with some redshift rendering and stuff like that. But okay, let's get back on track, right? Get it on track, Okay, so get back on track, dude. I'm sorry. It's just it was I couldn't hold it. It was an urge, right? So if I have this brick, going back to this, I can start drawing this. But my point is that you can change the randomness of that selection. So if I select, for example, let's say this brick, which is a little more plain than this one, and let's change this back to like drag rect, and this multi-selector, if I go by one, that means I'm dragging that brick, and now the next one that I'm going to drag is the next one on this selector over here on the top, right? And then I drag the next one and the next one and the next one. So it's going to go one mesh forward. Let's say it's selecting the next mesh when I draw a mesh, right? And then the next one I draw is going to be the next one, and you get the idea, right? So if I select two, it's going to go every two meshes. So if I do this, for example, and I wish there was a different one. Let me go to IMM primitives, which is easier to see because these bricks are slightly different. They're not that different though. So if I go to something like this IMM primitives, and if I select this sphere, and then I go multi-selector 1, you can see that I'm dragging this sphere, and now it's selected the next one. You see that? I didn't touch anything. It just did that automatically. So I'm drawing that sphere, then I'm drawing that one, then that one, then that one, then the capsule. So it's going to go 1, 1, 1, 1, right? If I go and select 2, it's going to go that cube, then the capsule, then the tetrasphere. So it's going to go backwards, actually. This is not, the variations is what's going to control that. And number 3, it's going to go random. It's going to do a random selection of your brushes. So of your meshes, I'm sorry. So if you want to do that with a brick and just start spawning bricks randomly, and you have a collection of bricks maybe that you sculpted, then you have that ability, right? So now that we have that, we also have the ability, this is just the selector. We can select it over here, but I just use this top thing over there. And obviously then the multi-mesh variations. So again, if you look at this, it's just how many variations do you want? Maybe 4. And then you want to tell it, okay, you want to cycle forward or backward or random, again, like the multi-mesh selector. So if I do cycle forward, it's going to go and pick the 5 next meshes and randomize those. So if I select this one, and then I go, okay, I want 5 variations, and I want this forward, I can go like this, and then it's going to go random forward, always, right? So this is useful if you're just doing it by hand. But my point is, which is what I wanted to do, and this is how I use something like an IMM brick brush to do tileable textures, like a start on the tileable textures, to get a good start so that I could just sculpt. What I do is I turn this into a NanoMesh. Now we're covering NanoMesh brush. So if I start and click, I have to have that brush selected, obviously, and then I can change the depth, whatever. But if I go over here and click Create NanoMesh, you can see it turn this brush into a ZModeler brush. That means it's going to look at the faces, the edges, and the points, and we have this kind of ability, right? We have the ability to change the actions. We don't want to change anything because what it's doing is basically creating a ZModeler brush and then adding this to the mesh selector and then changing those settings to just insert NanoMesh. So what I want to do is, after I create the NanoMesh, I'm going to hover over a face, hold spacebar, and instead of telling it just do this to a single poly. I'm going to do it to all polys. And now I want this brick over here, or maybe that one. I don't know. This one that's a little plain. It's a little plainer in a sense, like it's more dull. That's what you want, because otherwise it's going to be noticeable, like the repetition. So basically, if I go over here and I draw this on that plane, it's going to drag a bunch of those bricks on my plane, right? Now it's going to draw on every polygon because I set it to all polygons. Now, the tab that controls this NanoMesh, which is also an instancing system, is under ArrayMesh. It's NanoMesh. And it's under ArrayMesh because those two are the instancing systems. There's a logic to this. I know there's a lot of people going like, oh, it's all stacked and whatever. There's a logic to how things are ordered here. So NanoMesh is right below ArrayMesh because they are two alternatives. Rarely would you use both unless, I don't know, maybe you would in a specific project. But in this case, for like tileable textures, like you either use one or the other, right? So NanoMesh has a cool ability in my mind, which is, let me set the size to 1, and then this rotation, maybe I want to do like 90 degrees, so they're all facing like sideways. I don't want maybe this has some, no, it doesn't. So I'm dragging on all polygons, and I want this to be offset on the Z by 0. Actually, I don't want any offset, so I want them to clip right in the middle. And obviously, this is a lot of polygons. Maybe I don't want that many polygons. I already have the brush, so I'm just going to create, or actually, I could insert another plane. Or actually, yeah, I want to create another tool, another plane, because I'm going to use that initialize, plane 3D. I'm going to use that initialize to reduce that geometry instead of just going ZModeler. I could just go on my ZModeler and just, yeah, okay, I know. I will just shut up about it. There we go. He heard me. ZBrush heard me. So I'm going to just turn my clay buildup brushes for a second. So I'm going to go 30, maybe not 30, maybe like 20. Or maybe even less, maybe like 16, and then 16. And now I'm going to make PolyMesh 3D. I'm going to bring that over to that other tool. Otherwise, it's going to start getting a little crazy. So I'm going to go, or actually I could do this over here. I have the brush. So if I go to that NanoMesh brush, and then I insert on all polygons, you can see like they're straight, right? And now that I have that, under NanoMesh, I have controls over how do these meshes spawn on each of those placement polygons. So it's dependent on the polygons. These meshes still don't exist. You can see my active points do not change. Well, when I was doing an IMM and just dragging the object, it was ramping up that poly count because it was actually making real geometry that I could sculpt on. I still can't sculpt on this. I'm just setting the instancing system. So what I want to do is I want to make the size of this to 1, and then maybe I want to have some Z offset, which is like basically moving this in like that way, right, on the Z axis. I want to have some variation. So if I start making a little bit of variation, maybe I want to push this down a little bit, and then adding some variation. You can see what's starting to happen right there, right? So it's starting to give us a little bit of that offset. And now maybe I want some rotation as well, like on the x-axis, I can rotate it a little bit and then add some of that rotation as well. So you have to imagine that on that background, there might be some plaster or something, right? So if you're building like a stone wall or a brick wall, this would be something that I would start with, right? So I can go, maybe I want to increase that size maybe a little bit. Maybe I want to change that Y rotation just a tad, because this could be crazy. It can get a little crazy. So I'm going to do that, and then maybe do a little bit of variation as well. And maybe the size as well. Maybe I want that length, which is that basically how tall it is, to be like maybe 0.5 or maybe 0.9, just a little bit, and then add some variation as well to that, right? That rotation, I don't like that rotation, so I might increase that rotation a little more, and maybe have this be a little bigger. So what we can do now is we can tile this. We can do random distribution. So I can tile this by like 2, let's say, on that axis, right? So I still have the same poly count if I didn't have NanoMesh on. Like this is still the same poly count, but I have double the bricks from top down. I could also do the same thing on the V. So I could go, I can tile it 2 times on the V, but then you'd have those gaps, right? It depends on what you're looking for. So I can do 2, and then I want some random distribution like that, and can get a little crazy. Again, as I told you, I have to be careful with this. So maybe like 2, that's fine. So I want to rotate a little bit more variation to that, please, and a little bit bigger. So now we're starting to have like a more organic kind of like stone wall, right? And if you don't want, maybe you want to change to a different brick, don't just add another NanoMesh instance, because again, this is dependent on polygroups. So if I turn off my NanoMesh and I have this, I can still do another brick and go over here and do a single poly. And now that single poly is going to have a different brick, right? But what I could do is I could go over here and copy this and still have the same, and still have the same setting on the mesh for all polygons, change the type of brick I want, drag it over again, and then just paste that NanoMesh. And then I can experiment with different types of bricks. Maybe I want to try maybe this one, and then just drag it over and paste. This doesn't work as well, so I might just go for, again, a more simple kind of brick, and then just paste that. And you can see like how many versions of that wall you can just create with just 40 different bricks, basically, right? So you can go and do crazy stuff with this. You can paint a section, do a different brick for that section, and etc., right? And then after you do this, what you need to do to make these sculptable, to make these actual geometry, what you need to do is actually go under inventory and then click one to mesh. So that one to mesh is going to make it sculptable. So now you can see like we have 30 million polygons already. And if we just want to sculpt on top of this, we don't need to preserve every single mesh. It could be like you could just weld all of these together, maybe use DynaMesh or something. So you can see it's a different poly group. So I can Control-Shift-Tap that. It's going to hide everything else. So it's going to hide that plane that we had. I'm going to invert this actually. And then I'm going to go under Subtool, under Split, and just split whatever's hidden, right? And now that I have this plane, because I'm going to use this plane, right? Again, memory issues here. If we're going to use this plane anyway for like surface noise, right? To have like a plaster underneath it. So turning off solo mode, going to this, like the bricks, and then I want to DynaMesh it, but I want to retain like that resolution. So I'm going to drag that resolution slider, and it's going to turn into a picker. And I can pick, I want this to be preserved. So it's going to preserve that detail, but it's still going to reduce the geometry because it's going to weld a bunch of these bricks that are like hidden. So if I DynaMesh this now, it's going to take a while. It's going to close holes if there's any holes. And am I lagging a little bit? Maybe. Okay, there we go. So it's DynaMeshed. It's blurred out a little bit, but it's fine if this is just your starting point. And again, maybe you don't want this because, again, it's still not tileable. So let me just undo that real quick. And what I need to do before anything else is just, I'm going to grab these, right? And actually, I don't want solo mode because I want to be able to see that. I'm going to turn on transparency and ghost. And what I need to see is I want to duplicate those bricks to the other side because I want to make sure that those are tileable, right? So I'm going to go Control-Shift-A to expand to the mesh, basically, and then invert that. And I'm going to delete that. I'm going to delete hidden. Geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. And now what I want to do is I want to grab these, Control-Shift-A, mask them. I can even make them their own poly group, right? Mask them, then invert. And now those, I'm going to duplicate them over. So with my gizmo still in the center, hold Control and drag that. And now make sure you're dragging to 2 units, right? So you're moving them 2 units. Again, we mentioned before, it's the standard scale of the plane 3D, right? So if we hold Shift as well, we can snap to even values, to whole values, actually. And make sure it's on 2. There we go. So that is going to be tileable now. So now what we need to do is actually make that part not look that awful, right? So we can just duplicate stuff around. But again, the idea behind this is that you can be a little bit more creative with the way you can create, like, very quickly, just create different brick patterns. And then again, as you have this, let's DynaMesh it again, just drag that resolution over there, DynaMesh it. And then we can also use our IMM to just spawn a few different bricks over here so it's not as noticeable, and re-DynaMesh that. So now we have 5 million polygons, which is more than sculptable, right? And we can go again with our mallet fast brush and with WrapMode, again, because this is still looking at both sides. With WrapMode, we can make sure that if I'm sculpting on the brick that is going to be tileable like that, you can see it's sculpting on both sides. So I can sculpt on that brick over there, and you can see it's sculpting over there. So let me be more obvious. You can see, like, I'm tapping this, it's tapping over there, right? So that is what's going to happen. So this is a way that you can create tileable textures very quickly. And again, I can still do a little bit of that surface noise. I can play around with this curve, do a little bit of noise like that. And then if I have that noise, I can go over here, smooth it out, divide it to maybe until we get like over like to 1 million. And then I can just start clay build up, turn on transparency with ghost mode, and go like, okay, I want to start having parts of those bricks filled out with a little bit of that. And I haven't applied the surface noise yet, but you can see what's going on over here. Again, this needs WrapMode because then you need to make sure it's tiling from one side to the other. So you can go like that. You can go like this, maybe fill that out over there, maybe smooth it out a little bit just to make sure. Then you have like a little bit of a bit of laster like showing through. Maybe on this section we can fix it by just pushing those verts up and then adding a few rocks here and there, but not much. So then we can do stuff like this. Again, we can add our ArrayMesh as well. So if I turn off that that surface noise, you can see what's going on. Also, the standard brush is good for this, WrapMode, and then just start with our ghost mode on. We can go like follow the direction of some of these bricks and then just make sure that it's clipping through. And if it's clipping through, it's going to show with our surface noise, right? So yeah, this is method number 2 of doing like very fast tileable textures, very iterative tileable textures. It's very important if you're in the games industry, you know that you're going to change stuff all the time. Like your art directors are going to come in and say, oh, I don't like this brick. This brick is too short or too tall. It's not as organic, or maybe it needs to be straighter. It needs to be like a straighter brick wall. So that's why a lot of people use Substance Designer, for example. It's because that iteration is faster because it's all nodes, right? It's all non-destructive. So obviously Substance Designer is way more flexible, but just for the fact that you can generate different shapes with just a slider. But if you want to sculpt, which a lot of artists want to sculpt, it's sometimes it's even a turnoff for some material artists and texture artists that they're going to have to work with nodes, because that's a different mindset that you need to have, right? There are people that are wired to work with nodes. There are people that are wired to be more like hand driven, like more do the handcrafting kind of thing, like sculpt everything, model everything, paint everything, right? And this is for them, right? It's a non-destructive way that you can still be an artist. You can still be very, very expressive, let's say, with your artwork, and still have the ability to change stuff on the fly. Because I could still, if I have the original plane, which I could duplicate, I could still make a variation of this without destroying, for example, the plaster, which is, look at that, beautiful. So without destroying the plaster, right? And I could have multiple variations in a single day. I can pour out like 20 of these tileable patterns for my art director in a single afternoon, right? So this is the power of using something like ZBrush to sculpt your tileable textures. Now,
question time.
Yeah, question time, because we're going to go through a bunch of other stuff that I need to cover. So questions away. Shoot them. Go ahead.
A few of them. Demisad, is it similar to a scatter pen or object placement tool in Cinema 4D, or just a 3D brush not selectable? objects.
You were talking about IMMs, right? The IMM brush.
Yes, IMM.
I'm not sure. You're the Cinema 4D guy. You answer that one.
But
So
I don't
IMM,
know.
I can
I
say
don't know.
IMM. IMM is actually it's spawning a mesh, right? So it's a
Yeah.
sculptable mesh. It's not an instance in any way when you're drawing a mesh with IMM. NanoMesh is instancing, right? That's different, right? But if you're just using an IMM, that's actually drawing a mesh on the surface.
There we go.
So is that the same with Cinema? I don't know. The
No,
placement tool.
with Cinema, you would have explicit objects, separate objects.
So it is like that. Like
You can select one of the bricks in IMM. You can select one of the drawn bricks and move it around.
Yes, because
Okay.
they're actual geometry. Yeah.
Okay.
IMM, yes. NanoMesh, no. NanoMesh, it's separate, right?
So the answer to this is it depends. Okay. Can you create your own IMMs in the free version of ZBrush for iPad? If so, how do you do it?
I'm pretty sure no, but I haven't even checked that. I can actually check it real quick while we answer other questions. Let me see.
Okay.
Let me check it.
While you're checking it, Vivek says, how do I turn my mesh into an IMM brush?
Oh, baby, you want to go on that tangent? Let's go on that tangent.
If it's relevant to what we are doing.
Yes, obviously. Like this is important because if people want to make their own patterns with the NanoMesh and IMM, then creating an IMM is important, obviously. So I'm just checking the license thing. So if the free version of the iPad has the ability to create an IMM, so let me go over here. No, because there's no create button on the brush palette. So if there's no create button on the brush palette, there's no way to create that. So
I assume it's one of the limitations because of the free version.
Yes. So if you get the full version though, which is €8 or $9 or something, that's like that. So the full version of the iPad has this. So you can have IMMs, you have nano, like not nano actually, IMMs you do. You have IMMs, you have IMM curves as well. So you have all of that, that ability. Not NanoMesh though, because NanoMesh is reliant on ZModeler. But I mean, we've announced it; it's coming, ZModeler, right?
Okay.
It's if you guys haven't seen that, you go to the Maxon ZBrush YouTube channel. There's a video, a short that we made announcing the ZModeler. So that's also coming in on our next release. If you guys are interested, you go check out that video.
So Vivek asks another question: is there a way that you can do a random brick above 40 in the ArrayMesh? I don't exactly know what that means, but is there a limit to the
above 40? So you mean having more than 40 meshes on that?
I assume that is the question.
So the IMM brush that has 40 meshes, that's not ArrayMesh, it's an IMM, right? So the array has the IMM has 40 meshes, but you can have as many as you want because we have already, like we have, you see that little number that you see on like on the top left, top right corner of each of these brushes. That means that's the number of meshes that brush has. So
how many does that say?
This is 162.
Well, the answer
you can go over than that. It can go limitless. Depends on your machine as well, obviously. But
so let's answer this in a simple way. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So what's the next one? Demisat. Again, notice that everything else disappears when you draw a single IMM. Is this normal? Can you disable it? What if you need to decide the size in relation to other things you've already drawn?
Right. So that is because I think there's a reason for that. So if I do that, for example, on let's do Sphere 3D, make PolyMesh 3D, you're talking about this, right? Let me just close my iPad over here. Let's go IMM. Let's do body parts, for example. And when you do this, you see that it's not disappearing. That's because it's because you have subdivisions. So if you have subdivisions, number one, it doesn't work. And if you're doing any sort of like instancing, or if your computer, like the amount of geometry that you have is just too heavy, you're talking about like doing that. Oh, whoops. Because we don't have the. Let's do it over here. Let's turn off our array. There we go. Let's see. I don't know if this was the question, but so you mean, oh Jesus, because we have subdivisions. Let me delete the subdivisions. It's not doing it. Let me see. Maybe it's the brush. If the brush is too heavy, has too many polygons. Let's see. Is this what you were seeing? Let me see. IMM bricks. No, it's not happening. So that is fine. I don't think.
Maybe for some reason at some point you drew one of these IMMs or something like that, and everything else disappeared.
Maybe
anyway,
there might be a rendering thing, rendering issue or something.
All right. Next question. Is this the only tiling style available? What about mirrored, butterfly effect, blended edges, or random splats?
You mean what for NanoMesh?
Them is
tiling style. What does that mean? Tiling style. Like, I mean, you're sculpting. You do your the type of. You could do a mirror. You could just turn on your symmetry and your mirroring.
Oh, there you go.
Is that it? Like, if you have symmetry on, right? And here's the thing. Here's the cool thing. You can have radial symmetry on the Z, and now you have 8 bricks going like this, right? And then you can sculpt on top of this, and then do whatever, right? You can do like maybe a little pattern, a little stone pattern like that.
The answer to this is: is this the only tiling style available? No. There you go.
No. It's going fast. Like, he wants to go fast. Like, we've wasted half an hour at the beginning of the stream. Let's do this, right?
So can you please explain WrapMode again?
Okay. WrapMode is on the curve, like in the brush palette. Any brush that you have, if you turn it on, it's going to sculpt on both. It's going to make sure that it's tiling. You don't need symmetry because symmetry is different. So if you have this plane 3D like that, this plane 3D, which is already sculpted, but it has WrapMode on now. So if I start sculpting, there we go. Start sculpting like that, you can see it's going to sculpt on that side as well. So let me do this on the bottom. See that? And if I go like WrapMode 2, it's going to basically make that tiling pattern repeat even more. And then the same thing for like 3, 4. If I do 4, this is what you get. If you want like an organic, I don't know, like
okay. Can you please explain WrapMode again? That's
it.
Tiling. There you go.
This is in a hurry. He's in a hurry here.
Yeah, because I know you're going to show us more stuff, so I want to go.
Yeah. I am, regardless. So that's the problem, right? Is there any more questions coming from your end? See, because dynamic turn on
apply displacement texture using triplanar protection.
Yeah, probably that was probably it. Like dynamic turned on. So if I have this, then if I do, that is a good point. That was a good point. I forgot about that, but no. Wait. Let me do that again with this plane 3D. Make PolyMesh 3D, and yeah, that was it. That was dynamic solo mode. That was cost saving, resource saving feature. Okay. I forgot about that one.
Right. The other question is there a way to apply displacement texture using triplanar projection?
Triplanar projection. That's a surface noise, basically. That's what you want. So if you have, it's not really triplanar. A displacement map, maybe not. There's a 3D projection for the displacement map, but it's just projecting on one plane. It's not really triplanar, right?
Okay. So
it's under surface noise, right? There's a little bit of you can do that with noise plugin though. Noise plugin, which we have like our Maxon noises here. So if you go to Maxon noises, these are triplanar in a sense because they're procedural, right? They're seamless in basically all planes. So if I do like this Luca, actually let me do this on a cube, for example, or a sphere or whatever. So if I do this and then I go to noise plugins and I'm gonna go Maxon noise. Let's do this. Look, it doesn't matter. So I'm gonna go plugin scale. I don't need to mix this with the basic noise, and let me enhance like that intensity. If I do like plugin scale, you can see it's kind of like it's tiling, right? There's no stretching anywhere. It's not really triplanar. It is, but it's kind of like faking it in multiple, because triplanar you can get a little bit of a weird thing happening when, especially on spheres, when those planes meet, the projection, right?
It's all fake. I have to tell you, Rodolfo, nothing is real. It's all fake. Let's not forget about that fundamental thing.
Yeah. Well, this is not actual clay, so obviously what we're doing is fake sculpting.
Don't say that.
It's a
that's real clay. Okay, so the answer to this is this.
Yeah,
there
exactly. Yes,
we don't even.
I forgot about that feature. That's a feature. That's a feature, not a bug. Okay, really.
Excellent.
It's a cost saving. So if your machine is it doesn't allow you to handle that many polygons, you turn on this little button over here above the solo mode, and then you go solo mode, and then it disappears basically every time you draw. Whoops! If you go on solo mode, and then every time you draw, everything else disappears. That was on. So yeah,
fantastic.
That's it.
So I think it's time for you to continue and me.
Yes, indubitably. So if I go over, let's go over. Where was I? Okay, there we go. So you see that? That was okay. That is because it's instanced. It's still not doing it properly. Okay. So if I where was I? Okay, let's go over now trim sheets, right? Because we've been talking about tileable textures and how to make stuff tiled from one side to the other, up and down, right? But for trim sheets, this is something that I know takes a little bit more of planning, right? A little bit more time when you're planning, because you have to plan out like your environment or the clothes of your characters. You could have trims just for clothes, right? Or for props or for whatever it is. You could model and texture anything with trim sheets, right? And you'd be surprised how many games use and abuse trim sheets everywhere. So basically a trim sheet is the same idea, but it's tiling from one side to the other. And then what you need to make sure is that your height matches your textile density, just the height or the width if you're doing it like from up and down, right? So if I look at this trim that I have over here, so I have a trim sheet over here, right? Turn on LiveBoolean because this was made using a LiveBoolean just to preview. What happens is that I am pretty sure that this is going to tile from left to right, right? So, and I know that in this case, my textile density for my game or my environment is set to 10.24, which means that every centimeter is going to have 10 pixels and 24.24, right? So if I have like a prop, let's say, that is like 1 meter tall, that's going to be a 1K map if the flattened version of that model fits on our UVs, right? So for trim sheets, all you need to care about is, okay, how tall is this going to be, right? This is a texture. You have to think of this as a texture, like a square texture. And if this is 4K, in my game, how tall are each one of these little strips over here, right? So I know that this brick section is halfway through the texture. And if this is a 4K image, that means it's 4 meters tall. So that means this brick section is 2 meters tall, right? So every one of these bricks is actually pretty large. It's like half a meter, right? It's like, might be like this tall, right? So it's a big brick. So if I put this directly into the game engine and I walk around this texture, that would be the sense I would get, that this would be a 2 meter tall wall if I just tiled this bottom section. And then what you're going to do is reuse a lot of these streams around all of the props, all of the modular kits and whatever. So for this, a lot of people would do is model something out in a basic DCC app, just a basic shapes, right? And then bring it into ZBrush right at the last second and just sculpt a little bit, right, on the edges. The problem is if your art director comes into the room and goes like, oh, I don't like that pattern over there, or I don't like that bevel that you made to that wooden trim or something, you're going to have to resculpt everything, right? You're going to have to redo the whole process, do the UVs or whatever, ship it to ZBrush, and then resculpt everything. And we don't want that. We don't want you guys to be like, you know, redoing the same thing over and over again, because that's the definition of insanity, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we are as non-destructible as possible, even when we're sculpting creatively. So number one thing that I'm going to show is how to generate trim sheets from scratch, right? So I'm going to go and pick up another plain 3D over here. And again, I love me some plain 3Ds, right? So I could go, maybe in this case, maybe I could go for a cube. I could go for a cube. Yeah, cube is fine. So make PolyMesh 3D. And I want to go for a cube just because I want to have some reference for the thickness, right? So I have like, I know this is going to be like around here, maybe going out and going back. I know that my plane's going to be there. So I can go a little bit back. So I know that when I bake my height map, anything that's going to be there, it's going to go down. It's going to be pushed down if I displace it, like in Unreal, for example, with Nanite. And if anything that goes like to the right is going to be pushed up, right, on my polygons. So what I need to do is I want to start designing stuff. And I'm going to show you guys SpotLigh for that. So this is an old but gold kind of thing where you can go in. Let's actually open up one of our presets over here, and there's SpotLigh in our LightBox. So I have some hard surface details over here. So I can go and you can import your own profile. So if you have a specific architectural detail that you want and you want to have measurements. So let's say you were doing like a Greek temple or something, like an ancient Greek, and you're doing like a Doric order kind of architecture stuff, right? So you have a specific types of we call it friso in Portuguese. So it'd be like the profile of those like those sections in the architecture that are above the columns, you know, with the illustrations and all of that, and the sculptures and the reliefs. So that needs a specific type of profile, and you can import that into SpotLigh. But what I'm going to show you is how to design one yourself. So let's pick up. Actually, I don't think I like this one. Let me get maybe that one. Is this one the one? Yeah, let's do this. So if I pick up this shape over here, one of the things that most people don't realize that SpotLigh has the ability to do Booleans, let's say, and design your own shapes. So I can go and pick up this other one and use this as sort of like my chisel. So I can go like this, make this opaque as well. So background opacity, I want this to be 0. Same thing over here. I want background opacity at 0. And now if I move this in and rotate this and scale this out, and let me rotate this out like that and hold shift to snap that, or maybe do it, maybe do this like that, or do that. I don't know. Maybe I like this one better. And I could go like maybe scale it down. And now as I'm intersecting with this, I can go over here and under there's a little button here that says union, right? And if I hold Alt and drag that, I'm going to cut a shape onto that, right? Now, do I only cut a shape into that, but this works with any image that you bring into SpotLigh, by the way. So you can bring an image that you have like in your library, you can bring a texture, an alpha, whatever you want, and SpotLigh still reads it. And if it's a gradient, if you have a gradient in an alpha, so let's say I can actually paint. So let's say I want to draw, because I used to be a fine artist, so it's like drawing is more intuitive for me. So if I go over here and click this paint mode, and then I go to my paintbrush, right? And I can go in and start painting my design. So I can go and do like, maybe do a little round shape over here, like that. And maybe I want to do, whoops, this is blue. I don't want this to be blue. So I'm going to flip those colors and make this black. So I want black and white. So I'm drawing black and white, like a black and white alpha. So if I go like this, and now I'm painting, again, because black in ZBrush is 0 opacity because it's a transparent thing. So if I do this and then I start, whoops, I need to be in paint mode. There we go. And now I start maybe beveling this out manually, like so. I don't want this section, so I could go and do that. Now notice that there's a gradient there, right? See that there's a gradient? I can hold control on that almost black section and tap and drag, and I can make basically an histogram scan in a sense, right? I'm just drawing, basically changing the levels of this. So I'm just drawing this out. And this is super useful. Again, we didn't cover this on the last stream. It's super useful if you have a concept and you want to start sculpting a prop or something. And you bring in the concept into SpotLigh, and then you have background on most of the images that you want, or you take a picture or something of an image that you want to use as reference, but you want to project this, so you don't want the background. Hold control and then tap onto that background and drag. And I can show you if I have an image over here, but for now, this is what's relevant. So now, also, what we can do, you see that we have an extend button over here. So we have an extend sort of like the gizmo extend, like the deformers on our gizmo. So we can extend it up and down. We can go down and make a shape like that, for example. I don't know why you do that. You can mirror this, so you can flip it around by doing, oh, come on. by doing this, this is flip. And if you hold shift, it's mirroring. So if I tap this and then hold shift and tap, now I have a design that's completely different. Remember that shape, how it was? It's a very different design now. So I can go over here now and start like maybe rotating this around. I can maybe do some repetitions. I'm not sure if this will work though. So if I'm gonna go here and click Alt that, yeah, it's not gonna work. It's gonna do the original one. So I'm gonna do this and gonna start cutting away at that. Maybe I want a different shape like that one and start designing. Now at the end of this, when you're good with your shape, right? What you want to do is you want to start and project this. Now, again, because we are going to use a lot of projections, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out of my SpotLigh by pressing Z, go into my draw palette and save a camera angle for this, right? So I'm going to store my camera. Again, I need to have perspective on. Doesn't matter. I can turn it off again. So go draw mode, draw palette, sorry. And under the draw palette, go under your cameras and click store camera. And it could be any name, because what I'm going to do is actually tap a hotkey that I assigned to this, Control 1, to snap back into my view. Control 1 snaps back into that view, right? So again, go to my SpotLigh. Now I'm like, okay, I like this design. I actually don't. It looks horrible, but whatever. If I go here and then just rotate this out and go like, okay, I want this design and I want it to match this section over here. So I'm going to go like that. And now I can hold this snapshot 3D and just drag. The more you drag over, this is kind of like one of those old phones, you know, like that you used to have at your grandma's house. I used to have that as a kid, actually, but whatever. I'm old. I'm getting old. So if I drag this over around, the more you go around this, the more edge loops it's going to create. And let me show you what I mean. So if you go like this, turn off perspective, this is what you're getting. You're getting that profile with edge loops, by the way. There's some edge loops over here. In this case, whoops, there you go. See that? And now you're like, okay, but maybe I don't like that. Maybe I don't like this kind of an angle. You can use, obviously, your clip curve brushes. You could do stuff like this and start clipping away. Maybe have polygroup turned on. So go Control Shift and then press and hold spacebar. Tap that polygroup. And now every clip that you do has a polygroup. So you can polish by groups now and make those edges like super sharp. Like maybe do something like this and maybe do something like that. But what I'm suggesting is keep using SpotLigh, because now you can design your cuts. So let's say maybe I want to do a little bit of an extrude here, or maybe I want to rotate this. Maybe I want that shape to be like that, right? So I'm going to move this out like over there. And now what I'm going to do is hold, because LiveBoolean is turned on, by the way. If I hold Alt and tap that snapshot 3D, this is what's going to happen. You're going to have a subtractive immediately. It's going to create a subtool that's in subtractive mode, and LiveBoolean is turned on. So you're going to preview that immediately. And if you don't like it, you can move it around, because this is, again, a LiveBoolean. So you can move it around, sculpt on it, do whatever you want, right? So this is a way, obviously this trim looks horrible because I'm doing this on the fly while I'm explaining, but you can start designing, and you can see how easy it is to start designing your own trims. And again, if you're not sure, let's say you specify a specific height to this trim. Let's say I want this trim to be just these 2 rows, right? So what I can do, again, with my ZModeler brush, I can just go in here and just paint this and do QMesh, polygroup island, hold Control, and I'm separating this, right? And then I want to split that over to a separate polygroup, because we're using LiveBooleans now. We're going to touch upon LiveBooleans, and now we're going to start talking about actually LiveBooleans to create tileable texture. So you see the segue. We started with WrapMode, then WrapMode with ArrayMesh, then ArrayMesh to like IMMs with ArrayMesh, then IMMs to NanoMesh, ArrayMesh, NanoMesh to like something like using a trim sheet, basically using SpotLigh, which is completely different. We're going to talk about ArrayMesh with SpotLigh, which is also another issue. So again, I'm going to split this up. I'm going to use the menu, actually the default menu, which is Subtool, Split Hidden. And now we have a separate subtool, and we can just QMesh this and move it back. And we're going to make this an intersect. Now, if I have an intersect here, everything that's going to be below it, I'm going to have this, is going to be basically you're only going to preview this to the height of what you want your trim to be, specific height. So if you have a specific height from your lead environment artist or whatever that's telling you, oh, this trim needs to be this tall, like 500 centimeters tall, right? So you might want to do that. And also, again, you can use this gizmo to select two meshes. Let me turn off LiveBoolean. I want these to move, not this though, because I don't want that intersect to move. And then turn on LiveBooleans, and what you have is this. The ability to just move it around. Okay, so this is my trim, right? This is the top trim that I'm making, like that, right? And there we go. Turn this off. You have a little bit of a trim, and you can sculpt on this. And now for SpotLigh, again, let's say I want a pattern. Obviously, we don't have any ornamental patterns over here. You can just get your own. You can sculpt your own. You can paint your own. If you have alphas, like you can use those. So, but let's say we have a pattern. Let's say we have like this pattern. We want to use this image for some reason, right? What we could do is we could go over here and just on our SpotLigh without changing anything, just go over there, go like, okay, I want this one. I like this one, design it, paint it, draw, whatever you want, and just project that. And now as you go over here, you just tile it using ArrayMesh, right? So we just use ArrayMesh like we did before, array, and then go like this. Maybe I want to use array with transpose. So I can go like with my gizmo, press the Y key to turn it into transpose. And then I want to start moving it like that. Whoops. This is oops, a daisy. There we go. Moving it like that, holding shift like this. And now I want to change the repeats. I want to change the amount of repeats like that and move it back. Maybe something like this. And that's a lot of repeats. We don't want as many repeats. Maybe something like this, and just move it back like so. And there we go. And we have this pattern in seconds, right? Instead of like spending all of your time just hand sculpting everything. And obviously you could do this and then sculpt on top of it after you apply your array. So let's say you want to start sculpting a little bit of like rocky detail. Maybe it's chipped away at some points, and some of these are more chipped and more worn than others. Obviously, after you apply the ArrayMesh, you can apply your surface noise. You can start sculpting. You can do all of that, right? So this was SpotLigh. How I use SpotLigh basically for tileable textures and trim sheets. And again, it's all non-destructive. And again, I could have set like another camera for this angle. So now I can go like draw mode and then store another camera. I need to have perspective on. Go to draw mode, store camera, and I'm going to call this camera 1. Just, I don't know, because I'm lazy. And what I can do is I can do like Control 1, Control 1, Control 1, Control 1. And there you go. And you're switching back and forth. So if I'm going like this and I'm like, oh no, I lost like that particular position, I can press Z and then Control 1, Control 1, again, Control 1, turn off perspective, and it matches perfectly, right? So you can still ideate with this. You can still go over here. And now I want maybe to cut this. I want to go over here and maybe make a little dent over there, right? So I can go like, okay, I want to subtract this, and now I want to pick this up and maybe mirror this now. So I'm going to shift, do that. Actually, let's do the opposite again, like do something like that. And again, we can go and do like an outline. So we could go over here. Where is it? Is it this? Oh, this is the back, front. Where is it? There was a scan thing. Oh, there it is. The edge detect. Right. So we could do like an edge detect and then just project that. And now we have a little bit of an edge right over there. So this for hard surface, you can already see like how useful this could be, like for patterns that are like repeating, right? So yeah, this is basically your SpotLigh for tileable textures. That's it. Again, you could do this to just chop it away, make some patterns and details or whatever. Any questions? Exactly. I was just going to do a pause for questions.
Question time. So there's an ongoing thing that's getting resolved. There was a question by Delhi Couple. How can we make models sold for 3D printing without losing the details, like when we use DynaMesh? There was a guide by Jern saying, duplicate the subtool, DynaMesh it, and then project the details.
No. Don't need any of that. You don't need to duplicate your subtools to project details again, guys. This is an old one, guys.
Okay.
This is something I'm always like insisting on. We have the undo history markers. So let's say I have this mesh, this sphere over here, right? And we're going to raise that resolution, DynaMesh it. It doesn't need to be like the morph targets where you need to have like the same topology, right? Doesn't matter. We're going to start sculpting something. Let's say I'm sculpting this and then sculpting that and then going damn standard and going like very granular, going like super granular like that, right? And I want to retain those, right? So if I re-DynaMesh, you're going to, well, obviously, if I re-DynaMesh to a lower resolution, you're going to start losing eventually. I keep sculpting, re-DynaMesh, and you see like I'm starting to lose that detail. Number one, there's something that you could do under DynaMesh. A lot of people don't even mess around with these settings. If you go to DynaMesh, there's a blur slider. Just turn that to 0. And whoops, let me go draw that resolution. And then there's project. So if you click project, it's going to reproject for you. You don't need to click project under tool. Basically, just click that project. Every time you re-DynaMesh, it's going to reproject. It does a DynaMesh and projects. You see the difference? There's no difference. Look at that. There's no difference, right? So that's number one. Number two, if you don't have project, let's say for some reason I was doing this, and then by mistake I did something like this, and now I'm like, oh no, okay, let me actually, did something like this, and I'm like, oh no, I lost my detail because then I sculpted more, like on top of something, or maybe I did something over here. This is something you can do, which is like go back when you have that crisp line, control tag that undo history. And now ZBrush remembers the mesh at that state. And now you can use your morph brush to just morph. Oh, no, you can't. Not the morph brush. You can project history, basically, or use your history recall brush. So if you go to your subtool, actually, under project, you have project history, which means I can just click project history. It's going to project. Obviously, then you have to tweak the distance because this is kind of like a little too far off, and it's projecting back that detail. Obviously, you need the resolution for that, right? So I could just re-DynaMesh this to a little bit more of a resolution, and then just, re-DynaMesh that, and then project history again, and there it is. You don't need to duplicate the mesh, because imagine you have like a 80 million polygon mesh, and now every time you want to project, you want to duplicate, and maybe your computer doesn't have like, I don't know, 512 gigabytes of RAM or something, So actually, you don't need 512 for 100 million polygons. But let's imagine like your computer is lagging, and you're like, oh, I can't duplicate this model. What do I do, right? So you're gonna have to tag that undo history and click project history. It's going to project that version of the mesh, which is in essence a duplicate, but it's not consuming your resources, right? So that is how you'd project back detail. Also, let's say you have this. Let me go history recall brush. Let me go back to where we were over there, right? Let's say I don't want to change that part of the sculpt, but I want to reproject that detail, right? So I'm going to re-DynaMesh at a higher resolution because I already messed it up. I already lost a lot of that detail. So I'm going to DynaMesh at a higher resolution. And with my history recall, I'm locally projecting based on my camera. So if I'm doing this, I'm just reprojecting that detail just on that section. See that? How much cleaner it is? Look at that. I'm just reprojecting this state of the mesh, right? So if I do the same thing, but over down here, I'm going to reproject the state of the mesh as it was before, right? And this is basically your history projection.
Excellent.
This is a long answer to a question that seems simple, but I want to clarify that you don't need to duplicate your subtools anymore on ZBrush 2025, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
So when you were doing, I saw that as well, when you were using that stencil thing to cut through and create a very bad interpretation of an ancient Greek.
Yeah, that wasn't supposed to be an ancient Greek, by the way.
I know, just joking. Just teasing you.
I don't want to trigger you, Thanasis. Come on.
I'm Greek. We invented everything, so we don't care. How does it define the depth of not the prodile, because it was fixed, the profile?
Yeah. So when you're, that's why I wanted a cube, right? So if I have, where is that? Okay, there it is. That's why I started with a cube and set the, well, number one, this is going to be our trim sheet, right? Actually, what we want to do, we want to make this go a little bit above. So then when we sculpt with WrapMode, because we have that ability, right? When we sculpt with WrapMode, it needs to have something. Remember, like we had with ArrayMesh, or you do ArrayMesh, but why would you, right? Just make it a little, go above that Boolean, and then you can still preview what it's going to look like. So why I did that is because if we have, for example, so if I do the projection over here from this side, like that, and if I go like and just project this, what it's going to do is going to look at that subtool and make it the same thickness in a sense. So project from there to there. You see that? This is basically what it's doing. It's looking at that for projection. So it's looking at the thing that's closest to the camera and the thing that's furthest away from the camera and doing that as thickness. So if I do this from this angle and do this, actually, this is going to look at the subtool, the current subtool that I have selected. So if I do this again, but like here with this subtool selected and do this projection, it's going to go and match that subtool that we have selected. So again, if I just want this to match, for example, this on that, and I do that same just snapshot 3D, it's going to look at that thickness. See that? How it matches that thickness? So this is how you measure thickness with SpotLigh. But again, it still has the proper edge loops. It has those edge loops, and the edge loops are measured like this. So if you drag this over, there's a, there's not at the moment. Let me see. Okay, there we go. If we go over here, whoops, snap that over there, select it ideally. There we go. And then just do a little bit of a, whoops, let me just scale this up and do this. The more you go around, basically your counterclockwise thing, the more edge loops you're going to have in between. But obviously, because these are clean edge loops, what you can do is go over with your ZModeler brush, delete that, or if you had none, just tap the snapshot 3D instead of dragging it. Let me just solo this, go like that, and then just insert multiple edge loops, and you can even have alternating polygroups. You can do this, for example. Now you have alternating polygroups. I don't know why you'd have that, but you could. So there it is. That's your answer. That's your very long answer. Again, tangent answer, Rodolfo answer. That's the type of answer I do.
Next, perspective. Oh yeah, there is a button where you turn on perspective or isometric.
Yes, there is a way to change the FOV. So let me do. Let me bring in a tool actually. So let's go look at the face or something. So
can't you do it right there? Can't you just change perspective?
Yeah. I just wanted to load a head because it's easier to see perspective on something like a head or a cube, right? So if you have a head, it looks a little.
No, that's what artists say.
Yeah.
Engineers say it's a cube. It's the easiest thing to see.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I'm an artist, man. It's not my fault. I was born this way. Okay.
Go ahead.
So if you have something like this, so you turn on perspective and you're like, okay, this is still a little, it's not really isometric. You can see this is without perspective. This is with perspective. But what you can do is you can go over to your draw palette, and under your FOV here, you have actually FOV, like field of view. You can change that and make that more accentuated, or you can have like some of these presets, right? We can start with 85, 50, 35, 28, 24. And this is also on the iPad. You can change this on the iPad. It's just not called it's called camera, but it's not under draw. There's a separate palette called camera, basically just for that, because this was very much used all the time on the iPad, and we just figured out we would just make it its own palette, basically separate. Good. So yeah, this is it. Focal length as well. Changing the focal length. You can do it by focal length or field of view. It's up to you.
There you go.
Yeah.
So it's the button on the right and the buttons on the left. That's the answer. Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
So last one for this round, and that would be. So if I understand, you have to do something about your spelling. It's nearly as good as mine. A trim sheet is a compound texture designed to be mapped correctly on a tile map for games. The texel No. Let's start with a texel, and then Rodolfo. So a texel, which is it's one of those things where people say, "Oh, texel density, texel density."
Yeah.
A texel is nothing more than how a pixel looks on your material, right?
Yeah.
When you apply it on the object. So imagine if you have.
So the texel is a texture pixel. That's what
Yeah.
it is. It's a
So
texture pixel. Right.
Here's my example. The head you're seeing now over there. If you go to Photoshop and create a 4x4 pixel chessboard, like black and white, and you wrap it on this head with the UVs, you're going to see a square this big.
Right.
But as far as the image is concerned, that is a pixel. The square you see is called a texel. That's why texel density is so important, because for parts of the model that have smaller UVs, they are going to encapsulate fewer pixels in your image. So you need to make sure that if you want consistency, that you need consistent, and they call it texel density. But the simple thing is, take one single pixel, and if you can see it on your material that's applied to a UV unwrapped model, that is the texel.
Do we have UVs on this? I was actually wondering. Let me see the demo soldier. Do we have UVs here?
Oh, you have UVs?
Have UVs? No, this doesn't have UVs. I wanted something with UVs, so you guys I could show you real quick. Let me see the dog. Yeah, the dog has UVs. Okay, so the dog is a good example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a checker, and I'm going to show you what I mean. Well, so basically, if we're starting with texel density, right? So this is like a checkerboard. Obviously, these UVs are kind of, all over the place. But we can actually unwrap them. Let's do crease. So is this... how is these UVs done? Oh my god. Okay, whatever. So if we do like texture on, and you can see the size of those little... This is actually horrible. I want to do...
Doesn't matter. Just zoom in and show us a distorted pixel. That's the best thing.
No, it doesn't matter. Like, look at the ones that are not distorted, all right, for now. So if you look at the ones that are not distorted, and I'm going to duplicate this dog, right? I'm going to duplicate this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go under my UV master, and I'm going to flatten this out. Actually, why doesn't it allow me to flatten? Does it have UVs or not? I'm confused. Like, let me just unwrap this real quick. Okay, there we go. Okay, we have some UVs with the UV master, right? That was quick. Okay, same thing goes over here. Actually, let me do this on this dog. Let me delete that. This one, and I'm duplicating this one, right? So then I'm going to change the size of the UV shells, and you're going to see what that means, right? So if I go over here and flatten my UVs, and I can, let me just go solo mode and control tap that, and then just scale them down. And then let's see if this works. So unflatten. Nope, it doesn't work. I thought I could scale those UVs real quick. So, but the idea is if you have a bigger model like that, right? And you make it you put it next to another model that's smaller. If their UVs are both filling the entire 0 to 1 thing, that means that the texel density is not matching. So the density of the pixels on two models are not matching. So the UV shells for this big dog, in theory, should be bigger than these for the small dog, right? So if you unwrap them together, you're going to get a very different result because they're going to match. So the smaller dog is going to have smaller shells, and the bigger dog is going to have bigger shells. So the way you set this, obviously, what you're doing when you're talking about texel density, you're talking about how many pixels does a real world unit have, like 1 meter? How many pixels does it, let's say a wall, 1 meter of that wall, how many pixels does it have? Is it 512 pixels? Is it, so texel density, like the 10.24 or the 5.12, that just means it's 5.12 pixels per centimeter. So per meter, it's 512 pixels, right? So then if you set your texel density, what it means is that everything in your game world will look consistent. So that you're never going to get like a table that is super crisp, and then you have, like, let's say a mug on the table that looks blurry, because it has like the shells are too small or the table's shells are too big, right? So they have to match each other in terms of scale. So if something looks blurry, everything looks blurry. And if something looks crisp, everything looks crisp, right?
It's like the good old days with print where we had DPI, dots per inch. So if you ever went very close to one of those 48 sheet posters, you would see that the dots, the pixels were this big, but from the distance you watch, you look at these, that wasn't visible. This is exactly the equivalent. The DPI of texturing is the texel size. That's it, the texel density. Okay, let's see what else do we have. We have a shout out from Yariv. Hi.
Oh, Yariv. What's up?
What's up,
homie? It's Tony.
Do you like my stuff on Backstage?
Yeah, I've been checking those out. I didn't have the time. I haven't done a lot Backstage, to be honest. But yeah, those are looking great. We have a lot of stuff coming.
Okay, recommendation.
I hope the audience just grabs onto their seats for what's coming. It's going to be crazy. Recommendation for ZBrush presentation is better to see on the screen what buttons and the presenter uses. ZBrush is full of keys, bows, smart shortcuts. We see these things happen without knowing what we're doing. Okay, so I have been trying not to use as many shortcuts as I normally use. So I normally just work like this. Okay, this is how I work. Nothing on the UI, and then I go like that, right? With my hotkeys, this is my brushes. I have like high poly sculpt brushes. These are kind of outdated actually, because I also use this, like the B. So I want to like the clay buildup brush like that, and I know I'm on the clay buildup brush, or BZM for ZModeler. If I'm using ZModeler topology for retopology, like we talked about, BZT, because I loaded it up on the Z startup, so it loads up with my ZBrush every time because I use it every time. So if I want, I don't know, like my topology brush, I know I can do that, right? So I work this way, but I mean, anyone can have their own workflow. I think the beauty of ZBrush, and this is something I've been telling people all the time, everywhere, because I never shut up about ZBrush, but whatever. That's a different type of story. So I've been saying that the beauty of ZBrush versus any other program that's out there is that most programs allow you to be creative in your final product. In the sense, like your output is you're creative in the artwork itself. So the artwork itself shows your creativity and shows the potential for your creativity and how you can customize your artwork, let's say, to make it your own, right? So you have your identity in a sense in your artwork, but ZBrush is actually the only one that allows you to customize your workflow. There's no one artist on the planet that has the same workflow in ZBrush. So that is the case, right? There's also, of course, there's things that people share that are very common, like people use the brush palette. Some people just use the same brushes or whatever. But if you look up ZBrush Live, for example, you'll see that some people are doing the exact same type of style of work, like they're doing stylized characters, or they're both doing props, or they're both doing, I don't know. But then you look at the stream from one artist and the other, even though they're doing the same theme, let's say they're doing the same type of artwork, they're using completely different workflows. So you can customize your workflow to your needs, and that includes customizing the UI and hotkeys, but not just that. It's the way you combine the features and make it your own. It's kind of like a traditional fine artist or a sculptor. No one sculptor sculpts the same way, right? That's the point.
There's a comment about the shortcuts. So, when you have the dial, is it all left mouse button, or is there right mouse button and alt control shifts and all that? I mean, that's
light brush menus. What does that mean? You mean like the SpotLigh, right? Okay, yeah.
So anyway, what I'd like to say is that, it sort of makes sense if there are shortcuts that you have to press with your mouse clicks. What I would actually say that a useful thing you could do, which is what I do in my tutorials, is make the cursor bigger.
Right. Oh, we have a thing. That's like what? Jesus, what was it? I barely use it. Yeah, we have like the magnifying glass. I mean, That's it. Basically, I just have to remember to use it more often because Paul uses this all the time. He's always like using the magnifier just to show what he's actually, you know, showcasing. And you can customize that under the preferences. If you go under, oh, Jesus, difficult to see.
That's built in. That's built in.
Yeah, that's built in. Anyone can just use this. And you can customize it. Again, let me see where the magnifier is. Oh, Jesus, where is it? Magnify glass. There it is. Okay, so if I go over here under magnify, can you see it now? There you go. That's the hotkey, Shift M, and it's this button. It's the same as clicking this button.
Right.
So if you go over here, you can change the radius to make it like super big. You can change the zoom, and then you can change that fade on the edges. You see that little fade over there? You can change that fade over there. I like to have this actually a little bit lower, and the curvature. So you can make this like crazy, like, oh, look at that fisheye lens. Or you can make this very slight curvature, have a little bit of a shadow, so it casts a shadow on the objects underneath it. So it you know, it pops a little bit more. The frame, you can make the frame a little thicker, change the color of the frame, change the color of the gradient. You can change the magnify curve. So you can make this like that, and now it's like curving weirdly.
Okay. So
yeah, see that?
Presenter,
look at that, right there.
So the presenter asked for a way to zoom into the menus, and this is what the developer made: actually a properly rendered 3D magnifying glass.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So this is crazy because that goes into what I was just saying about like customizing your workflow. Like I don't get, like, for me, as you know, I'm not as old school as some, for example, of the ZBrush Live artists that we have streaming on this channel. But here's the thing. For me, the ability to actually customize every little thing, even like the color of the buttons when they're pressed on, when they're not, the color of the letters when they're pressed on. I'm just going to show you. Let me just turn off this weird looking magnifier that is just created. But if I go over here to custom UI, not just custom UI, I'm sorry, iColors, this is all the colors you can customize on the UI. Just like this is the amount of customization that you have. Like every single little thing, like subframe, subpalette, palette shadow 1, palette shadow 2, unused buttons, age numbers, text 1, text 2. So you can see like the amount of craziness that you can go. I've seen crazy UIs. I've seen UIs that look like cockpits. I've seen UIs that don't even have that top bar over there. Like they just hide it. Like they went into the custom code and removed that. Right. So I've seen that. I've seen people doing that. So that is the beauty of me, that ZBrush allows you to be an artist first and foremost. And as an artist, like as a fine artist, like I used to be, everyone that I met in my journey as a fine artist had a different way of drawing, a different way of sculpting, a different way of painting. And that's the beauty, right? You have to make sure that 3D art does not, if you're a concept artist particularly, or if you're sculpting in digital clay, you have to bridge that gap between the physical medium and the digital medium. You have to make sure that you cater to fine artists as well. And in my experience, every fine artist that I show them ZBrush for the first time find this UI incredibly intuitive. This is something that gets people shocked. It's like every fine artist that I just show them ZBrush, they had zero prior experience to 3D. They go like this and they go like crazy. This is insane, right? They love it. And if I show this to 3D artists, that's different because they're used to a standardized way of thinking. You have to think like an artist when you're working with ZBrush, right? So if you want to do trim sheets and tileable textures as an artist, right, as a physical artist, so you want to sculpt your things, you want to hand make those things, right, make them come to fruition, then ZBrush is the thing for you, right? Okay, so Yariv is asking about textile density again.
Yeah, we'll talk about it on backstage.
Yeah, and we already mentioned that on stream. Someone asked that question before, so yeah, I can go on rants about that nonstop. Anyone at Maxon knows this. No way. They were planning making a shirt for me. Just says like, where's the textile density, right? Yeah. So and the textile density guy now.
What else do you have for us? Because we're approaching the 2-hour mark.
Oh Jesus! Okay, I didn't notice, man. So another thing, and then I'm just gonna show this. This is a very small portion of the whole trim sheet thing. There's way more that you can do with trim sheets, but again, if you guys know me, I'm on ZBrush Live as well. I stream regularly now. We've all come back. ZBrush streamers, like internal Maxon ZBrush streamers are back. Me, Paul, Ian, and Daisuke are back to doing our regular streams. So if you guys have any other questions, you're trying this out, or everything that we're showing on this Create a Maxon stream, you can go to our regular streams and then just pop in the question, hey, you mentioned this on that stream, and we can reply on the fly. Because again, there's so much packed into this that obviously you guys are going to try it out when you go back to your daily schedule, let's say, and you might come across an issue or something. You can just pop into our streams, our regular streams, and ask those questions, right? So the thing that I was going to mention is this, right? Why do I have these little colors over here? This is very important, right? So visibility sets, number one, we already talked about that last stream for like props. And if you have like a whole like modular set like this, like a modular door that could be just, you know, like duplicated around, and you want to bake these separately, you have visibility sets for that, right? So if you have this on a trim sheet, you could also just bake them separately. But in this case, what I want to show is having PolyPaint applied to a specific section of the Boolean. This is Boolean, right? But if I have like a trim like this one, where it's not Boolean yet, but what I have is PolyPaint with different subtools underneath. And you can see this brick is just an array, right? So then I would apply this and then maybe sculpt a little bit of that variation, because you can still tell the tiling because of the whole like surface noise thing. And you're going to be able to tell if I apply the surface noise. So if I go over here in my ArrayMesh, again, I just made this thing tile. Make sure that this brick is the same as this one. This one is the same as this one. So it tiles perfectly. So if I go over here and then just apply my ArrayMesh, why am I using the mouse? Oh my God, it's a travesty. So if I go over here and just make my meshes, and now we can see that if I apply the surface noise, it's going to apply to both of those. So it's a little better, but then I make the mesh again. This is just to save us some time, right? So we don't want to sculpt every single brick individually. We just make the major sculpt on one brick, array it, and then just sculpt the variations, right? Again, like make the mesh, and it's going to take a little longer because this is going to be 33 million polygons, right? So if I do this now, you can see that it's breaking a little bit of that repetition with the surface noise. So I can start, you know, maybe sculpting on this a little bit. Obviously, this is horrible. I shouldn't do that. Just do like mallet fast and start like chipping away. And then obviously you see like, okay, I have a different subtool for this, which is going to be like the in-betweens of our bricks, right? So the in-betweens here means that I have a PolyPaint color, so I can mask it automatically when I'm baking my trim and substance, right? So if this is a separate material, for me, it's much easier, unless it's matching precisely that textile density. So if I know that that little square is going to be exactly like one material in substance, I can just do basically a drag rect, right? A rectangular selection and just make this whole thing a one material with a mask. But if I have variations inside, like let's say this is kind of like an emerald kind of thing, I have this color, and then in substance, let me open up substance now. In substance, I'm gonna have the ability to mask it by color ID. So I'm gonna open up substance and see if my screen lags. It's not. There you go. It wasn't substance. It wasn't substance, and it was probably something on my machine. So let me see. So if I open up that same file, I'm gonna go trims texturing. The cool thing about this is that we've talked about the RGB workflows, right? And we can talk a little bit more about it on our next stream. Potentially, that's what we're going to do, because we spend a lot of time on tileable textures and trim sheets, because that's my juice, man. That's what I want. And I love tileable textures and trim sheets, man. I love tileable textures and trim sheets. I like UVs. I know you guys are going to call me crazy. I like UVs. I like the technical part of making like the modular kits and all of that. Call me nerd. That's what we are here for, right? So this is my favorite part. So I don't know if you can notice that, but this is the same. There's a bunch of more of them, like these cobblestone things, but this is the same trim sheet that we had. So this is trim 2, I think. Is it trim 2? Yeah, this is trim 1. So this is the same trim sheet that we were just seeing in ZBrush after baking, applying a smart material that I created for this particular thing. And you can see that this blood kind of like rune section, whatever, that I made with some alphas that I'm a fan of, because, you know, I have the little book over here. There we go. You guys can see it, right? There we go. That's the thing, right? Love that game. So I did use a lot of those alphas just to test this out and basically base this off. So a lot of these alphas, I'm just using that color from the PolyPaint to mask it automatically. So if I go down here under my, I don't name my layers, man. This is horrible. I should name my layers. So let me go down. Where is it?
Always name your layers.
I don't, man.
This is a public safety announcement. Always name your layers.
Always be naming layers. There you go. So let me just collapse this. This is the blood section. Why is this? Oh, there it is. This whole group of layers, if you look at the mask, there's a color selection mask. And under here, under the pick color, if you click pick color, it's going to show you that color ID. Now, to get that as a color ID in Substance, you need to bake your PolyPaint and not bake your material. So once you're baking, under your baking menu, if you go to your texture set settings and you go to your bake mesh maps, okay, and under your common settings, under ID, you want to change this. By default, it's set to material color. You want to change this to vertex color, because that's what PolyPaint and ZBrush is. It's vertex color, right? And so it's baking that vertex color as an ID map that then is going to be used as a mask if you want to use it. So basically, you go right click and you can just go over here, add mask with color selection. And it's going to add that with no color selection. In this case, rebuilding my mask, you can see that there's nothing there. It's just this darker version of that stone. And then what we can do is under, oh my God, this is a little different. They made an update to this. And under here, under pick color, click this. And then you have a color picker. And then you just click the red one. And there you go. Right? So you're building our materials like this. The same thing goes for this. Like I did not make a different material here, but I could make it one on the go. For this example, that's actually perfect. So let's say I want to apply a different smart material or something that I have over here. Let's say I have built a generic kind of like emerald material or something. But in this case, we have like the jade. I think we have a jade. Well, we have bronze. Wow, that's cool. Okay, let's use bronze. So I'm going to block that in here, bronze corroded. This is everywhere, and I hate this. It's actually pretty overblown. But let me just go right-click and add mask with color selection. Pick color, and then you can see from my PolyPaint and ZBrush. Remove that. From my PolyPaint and ZBrush, it read that green PolyPaint. Click that, and now it's only going to affect those. And then obviously you can tweak this mask. You can blur it. You can make it a little bigger, maybe add some variation to that. But yeah, this is basically... let me just do a different one, because this is kind of like hurting my eyes a little bit. So let me go mask with color selection. This is also because I'm using an LUT for Unreal, which is a little bit more of overblown. Like the color profile in Unreal is different than in Substance. So I'm using a LUT for that. But yeah, so this is how you do mask. Let's say that you have like this polished bronze, maybe for that other section, and you get the point, right? So color selection, pick color, and there we go. Now we have a bronze section over there. And this is very, very cool. Obviously, we have an issue there with the normals that we need to fix. But yeah, this is very, very cool, because then now you can just design your patterns without worrying, oh, they need to be a separate subtool or anything. Maybe you just sculpt, because you can go in ZBrush and then just, let's say, I want to start sculpting a detail over here that's going to be bronze for some reason. Again, you can just go over and turn on RGB, and then I'm going to go, okay, whatever's bronze is yellow. So I can just drag this over and color pick that. And so I'm going to start sculpting on this, anything that's going to be bronze. Obviously, this is horrible. So I'm going to have to actually invert that and Alt to sculpt like a bronze piece. So I can just design something over here real quick. Like that, you know. So yeah, I'm using that mirror. So yeah, so this is sort of like one of the last thing that I wanted to mention, because I use this all the time. You have to think, again, because for games, you're always thinking like, what's down the pipe, what's next in the pipe, like, and how can I save time? Because if you're saving maybe like a couple of minutes painting these masks like painstakingly in Substance, if you're doing like 20 textures in like a few months, that's a lot of time. That's maybe like 2 days work, right, that you're saving, right? So that's what I wanted. That's naturally, that math was horrible. I'm sorry. Again, an artist, not a mathematician, but whatever. So yeah, this was the last thing that I wanted really to mention, because we're almost nearing like actually we're over the 2-hour mark. But again, guys, I'm gonna stream more often. Again, we have a ZBrush Live calendar. I don't know if you mentioned that on your housekeeping. But if you go to ZBrush Live calendar, you have the calendar there, and I'm there, Paul's there, Ian's there to answer any of your questions regarding ZBrush, and regarding, you can ask questions about Substance, ZBrush to Substance workflows, ZBrush to Unreal, ZBrush to Cinema 4D, because ZBrush, again, is everywhere, right? So you guys can ask any of those questions, and we're more than happy to answer to the best of our ability, obviously, right? Yeah.
Excellent. And it's a wrap?
I don't know. Is it? I could go on for hours. I could.
We know that. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a wrap. So
I'm convinced it's a disease for me.
Yeah, don't call it a disease. It's a condition, definitely.
It's a condition. Yeah, it's a condition. So.
So, yeah, first of all, I want to thank you, Rodolfo, for sharing your wisdom and knowledge. And thank everyone for joining us today. We have 2 more of these to go, next week and the week after that. And on the final episode, I'll be showing some stuff in Cinema 4D. But until then, enjoy the stuff we see in ZBrush, and do yourselves a favor. Go and check out ZBrush. So let me bring up the page. Oh yeah, I have to do this first, and then they change something. I don't like it. There we go. So just make sure you go. I'm going to paste it in the chat. Go to this link over here, and it will bring you to this page over here. And don't forget to go to the Maxon events through the link and check out everything that's coming up. And of course, go and ask your questions for the Ask the Trainer sessions that happen every first and third Wednesday of each month. Don't forget to go to our YouTube channels and subscribe and turn on notifications, because a lot of the people that watch our content are not subscribers. And it's good to have, that extra little push by the Google algorithm. It helps everyone, and it's all educational. So, you're going to help other people learn as well. And having said that, let me see if there's anything else I need to bring up. Doobie. Anything here? Oh,
ZBrush Central. ZBrush Central.
Subscribe. And of course, ZBrush Central. There you
go. There you go. The hub for all things ZBrush. So if you guys are not there, create an account in ZBrush Central and start posting your artwork. I want to see those tileable textures popping in on the artwork, man. I want to see tileable textures made with ZBrush. That's what I want to see in ZBrush Central. The moment that happens, I'm popping champagne. Like just a post that's just full of like tileable textures and trim sheets. Perfect. Love that.
I clicked on this.
I'm already biased towards environment art. Every time I see environment art on ZBrush Central, I just go crazy. I'm like,
no, you're not. You're not biased.
So the moment I start seeing materials there made with like ZBrush and Substance, and then working and a real render, a real game environment or something, that's going to be when I'm going to go crazy. Yeah, the amount of artwork that we see every day on ZBrush Central, it's literally every day. Like every day we get like tens of artworks, and hundreds of artworks posted that are insanely good. Like
we're supposed to be closing off the stream now.
Yeah, and you get me worked up with this ZBrush Central thing. I was the one.
Okay, we're done. Okay.
All right.
Let me go. I need to click the buttons and go to the and all that. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Go check out ZBrush Central. What else can I say? Bye-bye.
Bye.